Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Discovery Pod with Eve. I am Eve Richards. Our guest's journey today into investment banking began when she was 13. Gosh, she worked in finance for over 13 years before creating her own brand. She's an award-winning author, founder of youth financial literacy organization Kids Who Bank. She has two major creations. She draws her influence in business and life from a range of renowned philosophers, authors, and business moguls. Some of her noteworthies are Nelson Mandela and Angela Bassett. So please tune into today's episode. You can watch us on the Discovery Pod with Eve's YouTube channel, or you can listen to us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Apple, or wherever podcast is available. Have any questions or want to know what I'm wearing? Check it out on the Discovery Pod with Eve's YouTube channel. I am joined today by my co-host, Tony Blass. Tony is a marketing professional. He's also an actor. He's a producer. Tony, welcome. Tell us, what are you currently working on that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, we're working on a film going to be shooting in Sweden.
We actually have rehearsal tonight, 4 or 5 hour rehearsal.
That's right. It's a wonderful experience. And I've just been cast in 2 horror films.
Wow, congratulations. That's
you.
Amazing.
Thank you. A short one and a long one. So it's going to be a busy month. And, well, I guess the other thing I'm working on is I've been working on my weight, Wegovy. I'm down 30 pounds.
Wow.
And feeling great.
Oh my gosh, that is fantastic. Tony, congratulations. You know, this show for us is all about inspirational and motivating others. How did you do it? How did you lose 30 pounds?
Well, I noticed that my stamina had been dropping. And so the first thing I did was I investigated my hormones. They were a mess. I was down to 100 testosterone. I'm now happy to say I'm up to 954.
Congratulations. Woohoo! Let's celebrate.
But also, I think working with you has really inspired me. And especially, I don't think it's too much to say in this film. We have had a past and, maybe even a possible future. And I'm looking at this beautiful woman, and I'm thinking, if I'm going to be credible at all in that role, I got to step it way up as quickly as I can.
Very sweet of you, but that's fantastic, Tony. I think so many people are going to be motivated by your story. I mean, losing 30 pounds, that's incredible. That's wonderful. So basically, are you working out? Did you change your diet? What are you doing differently?
Well, I've gone back to the one that always worked for me, which is Weight Watchers.
Okay.
And we are walking, and we're just about to start the working out. We've joined the gym, but it's one step at a time. But
fantastic. That's incredible. For me, I totally believe in living that healthy lifestyle. And I think it's great that you're doing this, and glad to hear that you've lost 30 pounds. Hopefully someone out there is going to listen to this and be motivated to go out and maybe join a gym or sort of change their lifestyle. So keep watching us to hear about some of this motivational stories from someone like Tony. So incredible. Anything else that you're currently working on, either in marketing? I know I don't want to talk about this, but sometime last year you were talked about a wine, something. I'm not going to say much about it because it's your story to share.
Yeah, it's a little early for me to talk about it, but I am working with, I've worked with wine companies in the past, and I'm working with a new a startup, and he's a record producer, and I think it could be a really special thing. When we get people together, I think we didn't used to have spokespeople for wine. I mean, with the possible exception of Orson Welles, I think. But other than that, it's about collaboration.
Great.
It's about putting together an audience and a spokesperson, and I think we're about to do that.
That's wonderful. I'm so excited about today's show. We've got an amazing trailblazer. I mean, she's a mother. She's gosh, she does it all. She's got into investment banking at age 13. She was interested in investment banking.
Amazing.
I don't remember what I was doing when I was 13. So what an incredible story she has. And we're really looking forward to doing a deeper dive into her background. And yeah.
Well, you know, the one thing I did right, I think, with our daughter is when she was young, we always matched every dollar she put away with $1.
Nice.
And so when we get presents or whatever, sometimes she'd spend half of it, and then we would make that other half up. And by the time she graduated college, she was able to buy a new car.
Incredible. That's fantastic. I know she's going to be joining us very soon, but I'm just going to go ahead and say some more things about her. For anyone out there, you're going to learn a lot about our guest, about investing. She is the founder of the youth financial literacy organization Kids Who Bank and Brilliant Minds Unite. She actually won the New York State Mother of the Year Award in 2019. She's the CEO of her own crypto hedge fund. She's a philanthropist. She holds a PhD in neuropsychology. Gosh, she does it all. Wow.
She's amazing. And then after all those years in finance, she moved on. She had a son, and then she moved into educating children on finance.
Incredible.
What a great thing to do. I think it's one thing I was never educated on, and I do feel that it's an important thing for kids.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is our pleasure to welcome Dr. Jatali Bellanton. Welcome to the Discovery Pod with Eve. It's so great to meet you and to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hello, Doctor. So I'm really impressed by your ideas of moving into...
Recording in progress.
I was really impressed by your wanting to educate children on finances. Can you tell us why you decided to leave the financial services industry and go into writing the book and then teaching these classes for kids and to teach them about financial savviness, I guess you'd say?
Well, I think the first thing for me is becoming a mother. Motherhood was one of the biggest catalysts for me because I just remember thinking I want to be able to leave knowledge, financial knowledge for my little one. I have a son. He just turned 9. So he's not so young any longer. But I just remember leaving that corporate space and thinking, if I was tomorrow to pass away, what knowledge am I leaving behind? And what generational legacy am I leaving behind as well? And then as I started to create this for my child, I had close friends who saw what I was creating for him as far as a book called Wants versus Needs. And they were like, this should be a curriculum. This should be in all schools. And that's exactly what actually pushed me towards actually creating this curriculum. And then before I knew it, learning how to create a program, hiring professors from institutions like Goldman Sachs and, UBS and Chase. And so it's been really beautiful to be in a space where not only am I finding the right professionals to help with this progression, but I'm also able to create a legacy, not just for my child, but now helping others learn how to do generational legacy. And it's been exciting to also now start to teach adults as well, because I feel like sometimes we forget about the fact that some adults don't have this knowledge either.
Incredible. Dr. Jatali, your story is incredible. You are a trailblazer. There's so much about your background in terms of growing up in London. I grew up in London as well, or was born in London. I was really amazed to find out or read about you that you got into investment banking when you were a teenager, 13, 14, and the reason
16.
was because of your stepmom. Is that true that you actually decided to get into investment banking because your mother figure did not know how to manage finances?
Yes. So to be clear, I was technically raised, I'm from Manchester, England. And then towards the end of my career, I did live in London for a few years. But in that time frame, rather I was in Manchester when I first started or later on transitioning to London. The main thing I will say is that my mother figure was horrible with money. And so watching her as the West Indian woman, she was really bad when it came to budgeting. She did borrow to borrow. And just seeing that financial struggle, I just realized I did not want to be like her. I wanted to be a different person. And I'm West African and West Indian. My dad is also mixed with Italian. So just culturally being from a diverse background, I also knew what it meant to be a first gen from different directions, and seeing a lot of the first generations in my family deal with the same microaggressions of having to understand how to multiply their wealth, wanting to be able to fit in, using money as a coping mechanism, because oftentimes when you come from another country, you want to dress as nice as the locals. You want to eat in the same place as the locals. And sometimes just the keeping up with the Jones aspect of being a first gen or a foreigner sometimes alone can make you really aggressively go broke. So that part of me, I just knew from a young age I wanted to dive in. So at the age of about 8 years old, I went to my dad and started asking him about money advice.
Wow.
And I remembered from there that transition was eventually getting to a space where I was blessed enough to get a paid internship program. And that paid internship program was something that just ended up staying with me for a long time, for many years. But that paid internship program, was a development school for youth. That started something with me, which I didn't know. Little did I know that now it's going to be 22 years later, starting at the age of 16 and a half to now 22 years later now, being in finance for so many years and leaving corporate finance and now creating my own entrepreneurial background in the finance space.
Incredible.
And I wouldn't change it for the world. Watching her struggles gave me who I did not want to be.
Yeah.
And I was at least blessed enough to have a parent that I could talk to. Whereas I feel like a lot of other people don't have at least one parent that they can discuss these conversations with. So it feels good now to be in a space where I can now be that person for them and actually help them create a safe space where they can talk to someone when it comes to wealth.
That's wonderful.
Did you encounter any rejection during the inception of your business, and how did you overcome and handle those things?
So I think that no's are the most important things to you and your brand and your business. I think we fear rejection, but in reality, I think that rejection actually helps us become our best version of ourselves or our brand or our business. And so for me, the no's that I was receiving, especially in the beginning, were people who didn't know who I was, right? They didn't know my curriculum. They didn't know. They were like, what celebrity's backing you? What bank is backing you? And I'm like, no bank is backing me yet. No celebrity's backing me yet. And I'm like, well, just look at my curriculum. It's an actually really good curriculum. And I remember that they would just make comments like, well, come back when a celebrity or someone's backing you.
Wow.
They wouldn't even look at the curriculum. And so if I called 1,000 schools, I would say in the beginning, we out of 1,000, we were able to get at least 700 maybes. And then we started working our way towards the yes. Amazing. And to date, in the last 6.5 years, we've gone into 403 schools around the United States completed our curriculum at 403 schools around the United States. But to give you an example, we literally had a scrub list of 1,000 schools.
Wow.
And so now, last year, we actually had too many schools. And I couldn't even complete all the curriculum. I couldn't complete in all the schools that were approaching us.
Incredible.
Just to go to see the difference. So those no's helped me perfect my script and my pitch. Those no's also allowed me to get to a space where I was able to blossom and figure out trial and error with what do the kids want to see more of? What do they want to actually engage in?
Yep.
And it also allowed me to also realize that I don't fear rejection, because getting the no wasn't the thing I focused on. It was a yes. And so if we had 2 no's, I'm like, that's no skin off my back. You don't know what you're missing. Yeah. It was the one yes. That is the most important thing to me.
That's incredible.
And so that was really kind of like the rejection pile. And now we are in a space where we need to be automated. And we want to fully automate as much as humanly possible so that we can give schools an option of, do they want to do the automated route where it's all digital and you don't need our professors to come in? Or do you want something where our professors are physically in the classroom? And so either way, it's a win for us. And I'm happy to see that more organizations, more programming is happening around financial literacy.
That's incredible. What a great life story. So my next question is, tell us about your background and what life lessons did you learn from your father?
So do you mean my cultural background or my finance background?
Your cultural background. Just tell our audience would like to know a little bit about you.
Okay, no problem. So I am West Indian and West African and then also European. So being raised in the UK, I'm Cape Verdean, Jamaican, Italian. I've been around a lot of Nigerians and Haitians my whole life. And so culturally, it was like a big melting pot. Good food, good music, good culture. And then my dad, his job, he would go around Africa. He often frequented the continent. And what was beautiful for me is that from a young age, I was able to then have access to that. And so for me growing up, I didn't really see race as much as I saw people, human beings, and saw what was happening around the world. And then also then at one point when he started having more clients in Asia, being able to then go into continents like Japan. And I remembered even when I had the opportunity working at Credit Suisse First Boston, and I started working in finance, when I had opportunity to live in Japan, when I had an opportunity to live in Germany, South Africa, the list continues. I just jumped at it. Wonderful. There was no reason for me not to, because I was at this point a global person and I was comfortable with different countries and cultures.
Yeah.
And so it made me honestly just respect other people's cultures, the world a little bit better. And that really impacted me because the things I've learned was that people around the world had issues budgeting.
Yep.
It didn't matter your race. I used to think that was a black and brown problem. And then I realized it wasn't. I realized people around the world had issues budgeting. And when you realize that, and then you also start to see the similarities culturally, right? When you go to South Africa and you hear certain music or food and spices that are being utilized, and then you go to Jamaica and you see certain food and spices being utilized, and then you have a Haitian friend who's making kele, Ghanaians call kelewele, which is sweet plantain. Then you go to a Haitian household and it's like almost every meal is with a sweet plantain.
Yeah.
And then, you saw the soups that were similar. And, then you start to realize all these different foods and cultural musics and the similarities. And you're like, wow, we're just all just separated, honestly, by water.
Yeah.
And I think that was really beautiful to see because it also humanizes everybody's story to you.
Yep.
And it makes you realize that we need to unite and conquer versus divide and conquer.
Oh, incredible. Amazing.
So there's a lot been said about cryptocurrency, and being almost completely financially illiterate myself, I don't really understand it. I have fears about it. I don't even understand the difference between crypto and blockchain or the other things that they talk about. Is there a way that you can help someone who doesn't know much about it, how to safely invest or begin investing in cryptocurrency?
So the first thing I will tell you, and feel free to reach out on my social media. I have a video link where I talk about, for 2 hours, I break down for another platform that I was a guest speaker on. I break down for almost 2 hours all things blockchain, crypto, metaverse, NFTs, play to earn, and a lot of those concepts, which is honestly a very good beginner's course for many people. Mm-hmm. But what I will say for anyone watching today who wants to walk away with some kind of knowledge, the first thing I'll tell you is the blockchain is a transparency ledger. It's a very transparent ledger that allows you to keep track of everything that is being done instantaneously. As it happens, it is up on the blockchain. So one of the biggest things I tell people is that look at your bank account. Your ledger allows you to tell you how much money you spent. Mm-hmm. One of the issues sometimes with a bank account's ledger is that depending what bank you have, it might not be down to the second accurate. So you might buy something today on Monday and then they don't report it till like Thursday on there. And you might think you had $10,000 to spend and you only had $100 to spend, right? Because they didn't update it properly. And then now you overspend, you have overdraft fees and issues of that nature. With the blockchain, as the money is spent, it is automatically deducted from your account. Yep. Instantly, you can tell where it was spent, who spent it, how they spent it, what time they sent it, utilizing IP addresses. Mm-hmm. So that's what the blockchain does. The blockchain keeps track of everything. And the cryptocurrencies are on the blockchain. The cryptocurrencies are basically like having, it's like you have a debit card and you have a bank account. The cash is the cash, which is the cryptocurrency, and your bank account is your bank account. It just keeps track of how you're spending your cash, where you're spending your cash. The list continues. So as such, you know how there's different bank accounts, there's different blockchains. So if you predominantly, let's say if you live in the UK, you'll have a British bank account. Right? If you live in America, you'll have an American bank account in American dollars. So if you're using British dollars, you're probably going to show that on their British blockchain, aka your British bank account, to show you how you spent that money. And so then when you look at the US dollar, then you would look at a US bank account, like let's say Bank of America or Wells Fargo, Chase, the list continues, the Redemption Bank. So then when you look at these different banks, then you're realizing, hey, same thing with the blockchain. Now the blockchain is allowing you to use a transparent ledger. And now that we know what the blockchain is and that crypto is a type of digital currency that is being spent on this blockchain, you then now get to start to break down which ones are utilized the most. So one of the biggest tips I say for someone who wants to join into this space, don't go after a crypto meme stock or, a meme crypto, right? What does that mean? You know how there's meme stocks where a celebrity mentions something and it has no validity and everyone jumps and buys it? The same thing happens sometimes in the crypto space. There are cryptos that have utility and functionality. Those are the ones that I would say focus your attention on, because if it has a purpose, then there's a group of people who are actually utilizing it. If it has more people buying it than selling it, and they're holding it, if you're noticing a good flow of people buying and selling it, if you notice a certain amount of longevity to it, if it has a good purpose, then it has a better chance of actually doing well, right? And this is all public information. Whereas if you're just buying something because a celebrity went on Twitter, I won't say any celebrity's name, but if said celebrity said, baby Doge, go buy it, or says baby Doge, 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 and you run and buy it because a celebrity just sang a song about it, then when it actually crashes, you should not be upset, because in reality, you did not do your own research.
Right.
You just allowed somebody else, just because they mentioned it positively, or convince you or seduce you into purchasing it. And just like the stock market, there's a lot of correlations between the two worlds. And I would say this, when we say we're afraid of this, keeping in mind that at one point, no one thought the Walkman was going to be the way it was. No one thought the iPhone came out in 2007. Who would have imagined that in the United States that almost every other person would have an iPhone in their hand?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And in this little time we've seen this transition, who would have imagined that we could be doing all of our data and profiles and PDFs from a cell phone? I am video calling you from a cell phone right now.
Wow.
Incredible.
And we're doing this interview. And so imagine this is how far we've come in less than 40 years.
Yeah.
So imagine where this blockchain is going to go, because when we see the government taking an interest and we hear FDIC and all these people are jumping in, and we're seeing what's happening, and Coinbase now has insured crypto tokens and insurance for the crypto, and you're hearing all these different things, not promoting any particular company, just to put it out there. It's letting you know that the world is paying attention.
Yeah.
And then certain countries are actually utilizing digital currencies like cryptos to actually back their country and government, like BRICS, which is happening in the UK. So trust me when I tell you, this is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It might be intimidating, but then now you have a new friend, Tony, that you can reach out to.
Thank you. And you are a wonderful teacher.
Yeah.
I've learned more in 5 minutes than I have in years.
Yeah. I think the great takeaway from this is that everyone should do their due diligence. So if you hear something on Twitter or on Instagram, always do your due diligence. So this is a good segue. Going back to you working in the investment banking space, and you decided to leave after you had your son. There are so many people out there who would accept jobs or projects that do not align with their work ethic. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give anyone who accepts a project that does not align with their core values?
I mean, personally, I feel like, especially when it comes to the core values, be very mindful of that, because when you're working against yourself, then you'll find yourself perpetually hitting a brick wall, in my personal opinion and experience. Yeah. Even when I was working and I knew I wasn't supposed to take on a client, I felt like those were the worst clients. I felt like I was losing money. I felt like everything was just more annoying. And then I couldn't even be mad, because I'm like, well, did I bring this upon myself? Because I knew I wasn't supposed to work with this client, and I still allowed myself to get sucked in. And so that is one of the first things I would put out there, is just the importance of making sure that you are aligned with yourself. You whatever, if you pray, meditate, you speak to God, you speak to the universe, whatever you need to do to be fully confident in whatever Denver you're going to run into. And if you do have to take a job, do your best to make it temporary. Don't make it a permanent situation in your life.
Wow.
Do everything you can to save, to invest, diversify your portfolio, and work towards it. Embrace the uncomfortable of having to save and work. And, so when we say core values, sometimes I think the more serious aspects of, maybe you're a Republican and you have to work for a Democratic Party, right? Or, something like, you don't believe in abortion, but now you have to work at an abortion clinic because you're a doctor and you need to save somebody's life. There's so many different levels to core values, but sometimes it's the simplicity of, I don't like to, I don't like being a secretary, but for this next 2 years, I have to be someone's secretary.
Yes.
And you might have to have a 9 to 5 and you hate 9 to 5 life.
Of course.
And so that could also be going against your core.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to embrace the uncomfortable of banking up and making the money and doing the hard part so that we can get to the good, soft part. But the hardest part is going to be, if you're going to do that, make it work for you. Save properly. Stay away from some of those brunches and those lunches that you like. Stop spending as much.
Wow.
And if you're not doing that as well, keeping in mind that, investing and looking for something that you do like that you want to go to.
Yeah.
And then, or if you want to be an entrepreneur, working on your own personal brand or business. We hear the 9 to 5, and then after that, right, the 6 to 10 p.m. conversation. That is very important, because I'll tell you this much: before I got to my successful spaces, that was one of the things that I did, which was literally I would, have my regular day job.
Yep.
And then towards the end, I was over here. And for me as an entrepreneur, because I left corporate, I left that space all at one shot and became a mom. So my 9 to 5 was being a mom.
Yes.
Right. And then at that point, being a wife.
Yeah.
And so when you're in that space in your motherhood, you're taming the home, you're building a brand, and then the little one goes to sleep. And the minute he takes a nap, he goes to sleep. I was working on my book, and then I started working on the curriculum. And then to make sure I was also making side money, I started to helping teach people QuickBooks integrations, and the list continues, right? Yeah. So my insanity. And then I also went back to school for my PhD.
Wow.
And that was another level of stress.
Incredible.
And I'm not going to lie, did I have moments where I wanted to pull my curls out?
Oh my gosh, how did you do it? Like what?
I don't know.
Do you sleep?
Like, huh?
I did not sleep.
Going back to this, so one of the questions that I have as a mother, and some of those meetings that you were attending when you just had your son, or when he was, maybe 5 or 6, you would go to those business meetings with him, right? So a lot of people would have asked you, why did you not hire a babysitter? I think it's fantastic that you did. You went against the norm and had him with you, because I'm looking at it from two different perspectives. For a kid, learning at such an early age to attend, just thinking about him and how smart he is. I think it's wonderful, right? So did any of your friends ask, but why did you not hire a babysitter to watch him?
Well, for starters, I wanted to be a hands-on parent. And it was interesting. I'm not going to lie to you. I live in New York City. I remember there was a point in time where every time I opened up the news or looked at a newspaper, they were talking about a daycare center where a kid was dropped, or a parent came to pick up a kid and there was like a burn mark on them.
Wow.
It was just really intense, and it was scary to me. And as a parent who didn't have my own parents alive to be there to take care of my little one, my dad, as much as I loved him, he passed away 4 months shy of my 21st birthday.
Oh, no.
And so, I didn't have my support system to really back on. And unfortunately, not everyone has a family that they can back on. Sometimes you have a family, but everybody's working and making as much money as they possibly can, just in a rat race.
Yeah.
And so for me, I didn't want a stranger raising my child, and I knew that was a sacrifice that I was willing to make. So having a nanny and not really being sure what kind of person they were going to be, and at a time when my child couldn't express and verbalize that person was being abusive to him, I just chose to only accept the contracts where they gave me permission to bring my child for the interview.
Wow.
And there were a lot of schools that I lost and missed out on.
Bravo.
In the beginning because of it, because they were like, you can't bring your child to this meeting. And I said, okay, understood, no problem. And, my son's father is a very hardworking man who worked double shifts, and he was somewhat of a workaholic.
Yeah.
And, I didn't feel like it was fair, because I chose to become an entrepreneur, and because I chose that I wanted to be a hands-on parent, to make his dreams or his goals get deterred. So realistically, towards when my child was a little bit older, or when our child was older, we were in a position where he would help more. Mm-hmm. And I was able to take certain interviews without my little one. But in the beginning, it was really important that my options were to either not do it at all until he's of a certain age and he's in school.
Wow.
Or do it with him on my hip. Or 3.
Wow.
Give up the idea of not having a nanny and a stranger raising him, and bring him to daycare and having a stranger raise him.
Wow.
And I chose the insanity of number 2, which is do it with him on my hip, and if it's meant to be, it'll be. And it was meant to be.
Incredible. Bravo to you.
That
is fantastic. Wow.
Now, some people might say that if you're going to be such a dedicated entrepreneur and philanthropist, that you can't you can be a mother, but maybe you're not going to be Mother of the Year. But in fact, you were voted Mother of the Year for New York State in 2009. 2019. Sorry, just a couple of years ago.
No, that's fine.
But now we wondered that about the video podcast about parenting. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but is that still in the works? And are you planning to go forward with that? Because I think we'd all like to know how you do that.
Yeah. In 2000, I think it was Q1 of 2023, you released a video podcast about parenting.
So we were exploring it. One of the conversations were just putting what network we wanted to put it on. I didn't want to just make a podcast. I wanted to do because I really wanted to engage parents on different levels, and I wanted to have conversations about freezing our eggs, and what happens if your spouse doesn't want a kid and you want a kid. Just the compromise that can potentially, or what if it's okay if you decide you don't want children at all. And, especially with women, when you come from certain backgrounds, there's this pressure of you're not a woman until you have a child. And so I wanted to have these conversations, but I also wanted to put on a network. And then the first network we were having a conversation with, it ended up falling through. And honestly, I realized it's expensive to shoot a podcast, the recording, the equipment, the editing. And I just didn't have the right team. And I'm the kind of person that before I spend a certain amount of money into something, I wanted to make a certain level of profit before I add more money to it. And so one of the ways around that is if you can get a show and get a contract. And I knew that there was just a certain discipline that I wanted to have with it. And so fast forward, we are here where we are now. And I've decided where I wanted to evolve it, because I also wanted to kind of go beyond just parenting, and I wanted to humanize our stories. So there is a show coming out, within the next year. And the goal of it is to actually just humanize Black and Brown stories.
Incredible.
And being able to talk to athletes and have conversations around the ones who are not, I think sometimes like one athlete might hit their wife or girlfriend, and then everyone's like, oh, athletes are women beaters. And I'm like, I have a lot of friends who are, and they don't beat their wives, and they don't beat their husbands. And my female athlete friends, it's like another conversation, or you'll hear certain stereotypes around people, and I just want to put a dent in those cultural, stereotypes. And I think that includes and encompasses everything, the conversations around parenting, but it also talks about survivor's guilt, right?
Great.
Something that we don't talk about enough is what happens when you are able to come out of a neighborhood that is not doing as well and flourishing, and you're able to flourish. How do you not have survivor's guilt? How can you help people without going broke?
That's
right?
Incredible.
How do you talk about NILs? We have youth who one day went to sleep with $100 under their bed, and no bank account, and the next day they have a $5 million bank account, right? And no one ever taught them about managing wealth, tax mitigation, or nothing. And so for me, as a finance person, as a mom, I want the conversation to go deeper, and I want to talk about all of these things, and I want to humanize conversations around money. I want to humanize conversations around the things that are important factors in building generational wealth.
That's incredible. I mean, you're doing gosh, when do you have the time? So, there are a lot of folks out there who grew up without mentors. What's your advice to anyone out there to help them overcome the generational curse, right? So there are a lot of people that I know who grew up poor, which there's nothing wrong with it, right? But what is your advice to anyone out there who really who needs that motivation?
Well, the first thing I would tell you when it comes to mentorship, it's important to have, sometimes we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes we don't have to figure it out by ourselves. Find somebody who has successfully done what it is that you would like to accomplish. And not that you're going to glorify them, but maybe ask them for the opinion, their advice, or at least some of the steps that they took to get to their level of success. And it might not be exactly what you're going to do, but it might push you in the right direction. Another thing I would also put out there is that sometimes you have skills that you can utilize to actually barter with a mentor. So you might not be able to afford that person as a mentor, but you might say, hey, you need to build your website up. You need to build your SEO. I can get you the first page of Google, and I know how to do this. And then you go to that person and utilize that skill and say, but in return, as I help you with this, would you in return be willing to do X, Y, and Z? Would you be able to teach me how you were able to buy real estate or anything it is that you're trying to advance in? And so I think that would be my biggest discussion, is really no matter what your background is, we all have a skill.
Yes.
And there are different people who are willing to help you. And there are also programs that are like, mentorship programs that different small businesses in different states around the United States will do with as well. So you might do a program, do some workshops, and then they might actually pair you with a mentor that can actually help you further along.
Incredible. Great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would imagine that you're doing a lot of traveling still, but how has the pandemic impacted your ability to travel the globe the way you were and to get business done in all the many continents where you're working?
So for me, I think during COVID, I did a lot in Ghana because Ghana, they barely had any cases. So I had the blessing that I was already starting to be in the country prior to COVID. So by the time they lifted the restraints and they said we could travel again, I ended up just going straight to Ghana.
Wow.
And, people were very afraid to travel around that time frame because we still were like, what's going on? But thankfully, my immune system's strong. My son's immune system's strong. My family has a strong immune system. So we went to Ghana. It allowed us to actually have an advantage because, especially in the real estate space, there were a lot of developers and people who were selling their products for less. Mm-hmm. Because during COVID, nobody wanted to finish their real estate project. They were afraid to.
Wow.
And so I had this beautiful space of saying,
yes.
well, I'm willing to finish my project. And,
I love it.
So
your museum in Ghana, right?
Wow.
For kids museum. Did you know
I didn't. No.
Yeah, she's got a kids museum in Ghana. That's incredible.
Oh, so we didn't finish the museum yet. We're in the middle of building. We're doing an event space. So it's not going to be a museum. It's a youth-friendly event space.
Yeah.
And so we will be teaching youth classes. We already started teaching the workshops in Ghana. So we're teaching them, robotics and coding, blockchain, play to earn. We're having conversations around STEAM, tech, and AI, all aspects. Because I don't think AI and tech is done enough in African continent as of right now.
Wow.
And so I definitely want to do my part in putting a dent in that. But we actually just partnered up with someone really cool. And we are in the middle. We have a bigger space that we were able to have the blessing of getting access to. That we're in the middle of building out a beautiful, really cool event space that will have everything from sound engineering spaces to the list continues.
Incredible. So why Ghana?
Well, so me being mixed with West African, I thought it was one. I like the fact that it's West Africa, so it's not too far from the United States. Having frequented South Africa and other areas, it's 20-something hours, 17 hours. It's a lot of hours of traveling. So if I had to do that on a regular basis, I knew that would be very taxing. Whereas I could do a 9-hour flight, like with a blink of an eye, and that was not a problem for me. Especially being like from the UK, living in New York, I was used to those 7-8 hour flights anyway. So 9 hours didn't bother me. It was like 1 extra hour. Even Dubai is like so far 13 plus hours. When you're looking at hours like that, it can be taxing to the body. I like this location. I love the safety. I love the happiness of the people that I met there. And I also enjoy the fact that you get a lot for your money, but then there's wealth in the continent. There's wealth right there specifically in Ghana.
Nice.
And there's a versatility. If you want acres of land that are, lush, that you want to build, let's say you want to build a farm on, you can have access to that. But then, there's also rich soil. So that's another thing. We have a soil crisis in the world that we live in. So to have access to a country where they still have soil, that in itself and crop rotation is so cool to me. And so that's the geeky me. I like farming and all these things.
Yeah.
I think about crop rotation, and I'm thinking about the fact that, having vegetables and nutrients is important, and having chickens and certain animals running around a farm is important to me.
That's
and
incredible.
Talking about all of these hydroponics and aquaponics, and so we really get deeper. But I thought that the terrain was beautiful, and I love heat. I hate the cold.
Wow.
Although I will say this year I went to Sundance Film Festival.
Yeah.
And Utah's cold won me over.
Yeah. But you live in New York. I used to live in New York City, and it gets cold. I mean, the winters are
cold. It's too cold in New
York.
York. I hate it. I hate New York's cold.
It gets cold.
I hate it.
So
it's so disgustingly cold at times in the winter.
I know. Oh, and by the way, I know you're Pisces, and I'm Pisces as well. So
what's your birthday?
February 26th.
Oh, I'm March 19th.
Oh, so happy belated birthday.
Thank you. And happy birthday to you too. It's still your birthday somewhere.
Thank you. So I have a question for you. You've talked about the event space in Ghana and your thought process in terms of, the process to spot opportunities. For someone like us, how do we identify opportunities? There are so many people out there that want to learn about business opportunities. So what advice would you give?
The first thing I would tell you is usually, sometimes it could be in your own backyard, right? It could be in your own community. So going to the Small Business Association, looking at little local events that they're having, looking at incubators and conferences where it's pitch competitions. I love to go to pitch competitions, personally speaking. I love going to these conferences and hearing people talk about their dreams and their aspirations. The fact that you're even on that stage and able to have the conversation in front of, even 20 people, I think is beautiful. And so that's one of the best ways to do it. I also say, look over their numbers, make sure the numbers make sense to you, as well, when you start to look for a company that you're interested in. Sometimes it could be even a family member, a friend, just making sure you have the proper contracts to protect yourself, and ensure that, you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's in case it doesn't go well. And as well, I think that it's also really cool, especially when startups, so there's websites like Start Engine that, for instance, and, they're just not telling you to go to Start Engine and invest there, but it's just an option that you have that will give you different companies and their offerings. And the cool thing about Start Engine and those kind of websites and companies, they tend to let you know the numbers that the company's already doing, how much money they've raised before. You get to kind of see some of the other people who have invested in their company, who's co-signing them. And sometimes in the startup world, that might be a good thing, because if you see someone like Robert Smith invest in someone, you might say, hey, Robert Smith usually does well, so let me see. Maybe this is a company I want to look at twice. And so that's another thing. I also like to look at what certain people are investing in as well.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You are so brave. I mean, everything you've talked about tonight with the traveling and the crypto, and it's all stuff that I find terrifying. So you mentioned wanting to bring AI into Ghana, and help me be less fearful of AI, if you would. How could that benefit my life? How can it benefit the financial space, and why is it so important to take it abroad?
Well, the reason to me it's important to take it abroad, let's start with there. AI is happening. It's here. Whether we like it or not, it's here. The issue I do find is who is programming the AI. So what are the sensitivities toward different cultures? So if African people, if Asian people, if these people, that people, if people from around the world are not in the programming space, right? Then what happens is you will not see representation of yourself in that AI. And so we can't say something is racist, but we did not help to program it. We've heard there's issues with tone sensitivity, and the list continues when it comes to AI. But it's like, who is programming the AI? Yeah. Are we in the programming seat? Yeah. And so that's why I think it's important to bring it to the continent, because it is $1 trillion, $1 billion industry that's making tons of money for a lot of people.
Dr. Jatali, sorry, we are at the 2-minute mark. To wrap this up, okay, we have one last question that we usually ask our guests. So if you could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
So alive would be Angela Bassett. I think that her as a businesswoman, entrepreneur, and a wife, I love the balance, and I love the fact that she's public but not public. So we don't hear her drama. We don't hear any negativity. Another person for me would be, I would say my dad, because I love my dad. He was an amazing person. And there were certain things I felt like he was prepping me for that I just want to be like, did you know that this is going to happen in my life? Yeah. Because you prepped me, and I felt very ready, and I feel very ready. And there's a lot of things that he saw in me as far as even becoming one day a public figure that I didn't see myself. And I was like, no, you got the wrong person. And he was right. So I would love to just have that conversation with him. Okay. And just kind of also be like, are you with me? Yeah. Like, is there a heaven? How does it look over there? Yeah. Wonderful. And, and I think the third person for me would definitely be, I'm not too sure, but it would be some kind of philosopher or somebody who I just want to pick their brain, go back in history and time and talk to them about their creation. Why did they create or write the way they did? But I'm not too sure the third person would be, to be honest.
Well, Dr. Jatali, this was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing with our listeners. Follow her and tap into everything she's doing. She's got a lot going on. Of course, as you know, she's an award-winning author. She wrote a finance curriculum, which has gone into almost 400 schools worldwide. Thanks again, Dr. Jatali. She's actually on Instagram, on Twitter. And where else can folks follow you?
Instagram is the main place. Honestly, that's the main social media page I engage with, because it is a job to maintain all these social media pages. But thank you so much, Discovery Pod, for having me. Tony, it was a pleasure. Please stay in contact.
Of course.
If you feel like I could actually help further with, I would love to.
Thank you so much. This has been incredible. Would love to have you back some other time. Thanks again, and have a great day. Tony,
thank you. Thank you, guys.
What an incredible interview. She's amazing.
I just can't believe how much I learned today.
Wow.
It's wild.
Folks, make sure you watch this. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. This has been an incredible show. Yes. You can tune in every Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific time. You can watch us on the Discovery Pod with Eve's YouTube channel, or you can listen to us on iHeartRadio, Google, Amazon, Apple, I can't even talk, or wherever podcast is available. Have any questions? Please reach out to me, DM me at Eve Richards on Instagram. Again, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. And thanks again to our executive producer, Roger Neal.